July 1518, Strasbourg. A woman called Frau Trophäa walks into the street and starts dancing. No music, no occasion. She dances for 6 straight days. Her feet split open and bleed through her shoes, but she does not stop. When the city authorities finally intervene, their solution is possibly the worst medical decision ever recorded. They build her a stage and hire a band. Here's what we actually know, and we know more than you'd expect. The Strasbourg City Council kept records of this. Frau Trophäa started dancing on or around July 14th, 1518. Her husband assumed she was putting on some kind of act. She wasn't. She was unresponsive, drenched in sweat, and showed every sign of being in serious physical distress. After several days, the authorities carted her off to a healing shrine about 30 miles away. It had already spread. Within a week, around 34 people were dancing in the streets, not celebrating, suffering. Witnesses described twisted faces, people crying out for help while their legs kept moving. By August, the number of dancers had swelled to somewhere between 50 and 400, depending on which source you trust. Later accounts claim as many as 15 were dropping dead per day. The city's own records from the time? Not a single confirmed death. Either way, the council treated it as a genuine emergency, so they did what any responsible governing body would do. They called in the doctors. The physicians examined the situation and ruled out anything supernatural. Progressive for 1518. Their actual diagnosis? Not so much. They concluded the dancers were suffering from hot blood, an imbalance of the bodily humors. Standard treatment would have been bloodletting, but you can't exactly hold down hundreds of people who are thrashing around with a lancet. So the doctors came up with a creative alternative: dance it out. The official medical recommendation, endorsed by the city council, was that the afflicted needed to keep dancing until the hot blood had worked its way out of their systems. The council committed to this fully. They cleared out guild halls and grain markets to serve as dance floors. They constructed a wooden stage in the horse market. They hired professional musicians, drums, fiddles, pipes, to play around the clock. And when dancers started collapsing, the council paid strong young men to physically hold them upright and keep them moving. It went about as well as you'd think. The public spectacle drew crowds. The loud music, the writhing bodies on stage, the atmosphere of panic and religious dread. It pulled onlookers in. More people started dancing. The situation got worse. The city had taken a medical crisis and turned it into a public event, and the doctor's cure was feeding it. So they reversed course. The stages came down, the musicians were sent home. Public dancing and music were banned outright in the city. If you were caught with a tambourine, you were in trouble. The council decided this wasn't a medical problem, it was a spiritual one. Specifically, they believed Saint Vitus, patron saint of dancers and epileptics, was punishing Strasbourg for its sins. The surviving dancers were loaded onto wagons and taken on a 3-day journey to a mountaintop shrine dedicated to the saint. There, priests placed the dancers beneath a wooden carving of Saint Vitus, pressed small crosses into their hands, and made them wear red shoes anointed with holy oil and consecrated water. If that image rings a bell, a person cursed to dance in red shoes until the shoes are cut from their body, it should. Hans Christian Andersen told almost exactly that story in The Red Shoes 3 centuries later. Whether he knew about Strasbourg specifically is an open question, but the parallels are hard to ignore. And then, somehow, it worked. By early September, the dancing stopped. But see, Strasbourg wasn't a one-off. In 1374, a similar outbreak tore through Germany and the Low Countries. And back in 1237, in the town of Erfurt, over 100 children reportedly started dancing and moved 12 miles out of town together. Some historians believe that event inspired the legend of the Pied Piper. So, what was actually happening to these people? To answer that, you need to understand what life in Strasbourg actually looked like in 1518, and it looked bad. Between 1514 and 1517, the region was hit by a run of failed harvests. Grain prices shot up, the highest in a generation. People who had been getting by were now starving. On top of the famine, syphilis had arrived in the region, carried by mercenaries returning from the Italian wars. Smallpox and leprosy were grinding through the population at the same time. The city's orphanages were overflowing. Peasant uprisings had been put down violently by the local nobility. These were people who had been ground down for years. Bad harvests, disease, poverty, in a church that told them they deserved it. And they lived in a culture that told them, in very literal terms, that saints could curse you, that your suffering was divine punishment, that a holy figure named Vitus had the specific power to make you dance against your will. That belief matters. It's not a footnote, it's the mechanism. The most common explanation you'll find online is ergotism, poisoning from a fungus called ergot that grows on damp grain. Ergot is chemically related to LSD, and it does cause convulsions and hallucinations. Neat theory. One problem: ergot severely restricts blood flow to the extremities. If these people had been poisoned by ergot, they wouldn't have been able to stand, let alone dance aggressively for days on end. When Paracelsus showed up in Strasbourg 8 years later, he blamed the whole thing on rebellious wives faking it for attention. We're going to move on from that. The explanation that holds up best comes from historian John Waller. Mass psychogenic illness, sometimes called mass hysteria, though that term carries its own baggage. Waller's argument is straightforward. Take a population that is starving, sick, and terrorized. Place them inside a belief system where a saint can literally curse you to dance. Push them past what a human mind can absorb. The body will find an outlet the conscious mind did not choose. It's not that they chose to dance, it's that their bodies expressed what their minds couldn't contain. We like to treat the dancing plague of 1518 as a weird footnote. But there's nothing weird about a population breaking down after years of famine, plague, and fear. The only strange part is the shape it took. If you want another story where everything you thought you knew about history might be wrong, check out our episode on the phantom time hypothesis. Links on screen. I'll see you in the next one.